The more I use the camera of the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, the more mind-blown I get. Not only does it still have the 1-inch sensor that Xiaomi introduced in the 12S Ultra, there's also a feature that allows you to physically switch the aperture, which is an incredibly rare feature in mobile phone photography. Regardless, there is one thing that Xiaomi messed up big time in this phone, and I have no idea why they didn't improve this feature to achieve perfection. Alongside Apple's iPhone 14 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, let's see how well Xiaomi's new camera holds up in terms of hardware as well as software. Let the facts speak. So, the two aperture values you can choose in the 13 Ultra are f-stops of 1.9 and 4.0. The smaller the number gets, the opening in the lens becomes larger, which leads to a blurrier background. As the number gets higher, the opening in the lens becomes smaller, in turn making the background sharper. We used 1.9 in this comparison as the photos just looked much nicer. The first photo is going to start off with a tie between Xiaomi and Samsung. They're not perfect, but I prefer them to the super sharp photo of the iPhone, which also has a yellow and green complexion. The second photo is where the iPhone bounces back. The S23 Ultra's photo is slightly darker than what I wanted, which kinda takes away easy to see details. The skin tone of the 13 Ultra is pinkish, so I'm also not too sold on that. Image number 3 is me sitting on a barrel. Don't let the cool pose fool you, I was pretty scared of falling over. I'm glad I didn't because the end result of the Xiaomi flagship looks amazing. Being able to absorb huge amounts of light with a 1-inch sensor allows the software to have the freedom of editing a photo minimally and still having it look really nice. For example, if the other two didn't brighten the photo up to this degree, they would have most likely been darker with lesser detail. The S23 Ultra is a step ahead of the iPhone here, as the yellow-green vibe of the Apple flagship is really starting to stab me in the eye as the competition gets better and better. Just check out how the ground looks beneath my foot, and also the highlights in the background to have a better understanding on why I prefer the S23 Ultra over the iPhone. Indoors is as always going to be a bit more challenging. The first photo is definitely not a favorite of mine, as I feel I usually look much better. Either way though, I prefer the photo of the 13 Ultra once again. Notice how the background is in focus on the photos in the middle and the right compared to the one on the left. Most of the time, natural blur behind the subject just makes for a nicer photo. In the next one, there are a few differences between them, but nothing too major as to affect the general quality and look. The white balance is a different value from photo to photo, but they all look pretty good overall. Interestingly enough, when the lighting isn't at a level that affects the way the software thinks, the iPhone pulls off great photos. Everything from my skin tone to the details are perfect, and I can't say the same for the others. The Galaxy is still more consistent compared to the Xiaomi 13 Ultra though, because I'm pretty sure my skin isn't pink in real life. At night, we're seeing the iPhone fall slightly behind the Samsung and the Xiaomi flagships. The main difference is how the iPhone sharpens the image more than the other two, which leads to that slightly artificial look. The same can be seen in the second photo, as even though all of them look fine, my preference is shifted towards the S23 Ultra and the 13 Ultra due to the softer and more natural look. The last night photo is no different, and if you focus on my jacket, you'll see quite a bit of noise in the photo in the middle, while the other two have sensors that just perform better when it comes to night photography. Now it's time for some ultra-wide photos. The experience here will most likely be quite different. The reason for this is that ultra-wide cameras aren't nearly the same quality as wide ones, especially on Chinese flagships. The iPhone's photo looks much more on point in terms of color, as there's an aggressive magenta and pink hue on the 13 Ultra, leaving it with only 1 point. The next one here is kind of a funny angle, as I kind of look like a potato. The Xiaomi 13 Ultra's photo was our favorite here due to the colors as well as the details. The Galaxy S23 Ultra was a close second as my shirt doesn't look the best, and the iPhone 14 Pro is too sharp, which causes my t-shirt and the tree behind me to stick out too much. What about indoors? Well, Xiaomi is surprising me as it has the best dynamic range here, which is crazy to me as this is mostly software. The other two photos also look nice, so they'll be picking up 2 points each. The last indoor photo has the Galaxy taking the 3 points, as it's a nice balance between the 13 Ultra and the 14 Pro in terms of brightness and shadows. The iPhone takes 2 points as it overall looks better. Night is no contest, as the S23 Ultra just has a better ultra-wide camera than the other two. Apple really struggled here as the lighting was not adequate, as this will become fairly obvious in the second photo as well. The points will not change as Samsung gets another 3 points, while Xiaomi gets 2, leaving Samsung the clear victor of the ultra-wide category. Next up is portrait mode. It's always a blessing with these kinds of top-tier phones. At first glance, Xiaomi was the clear winner here for me, but then I noticed it completely messed up the umbrella. This is why I keep mentioning how important software is, and this is the reason why the Galaxy is a step ahead with the iPhone coming in second. Xiaomi will make up for it though in the next photo, as this just looks great. The results make me happy because their previous flagship portrait mode was really mediocre and quite disappointing. I also really like the Galaxy's photo as well, and unfortunately, not so much the iPhone's photo, as it's just way too sharp. It's crazy to see the iPhone falling behind, as this phone was easily my favorite portrait mode phone, especially when the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max came out. The third one is tricky, but I'm once again going to go with the Galaxy due to the softer and smoother photo. The iPhone and the Xiaomi 13 Ultra will get 2 points each, as the first is too sharp and the second is too soft and flat. Indoors, the devices are continuing their solid performances. The iPhone is a bit unnecessarily dark over here, so 2 points to it instead of 3 like the others. Image number 2 though, I'll clearly go for the iPhone. It's so weird how random the software Xiaomi phones are, and even with the improvements, the photos do sometimes come out differently, almost like they were taken in RAW format. This photo was taken with the zoom cameras. We wanted to specifically show you this because the 13 Ultra does this really well, but you definitely need to play around with the settings. A photo taken straight up is like this, and the software ruining my skin tone is just killing me. The iPhone is clearly better, as well as the Galaxy. However, you are able to change the background blur in a way that imitates a professional camera and the differing focal lengths of the lens. When you choose, for example, 75mm, you'll get a photo like this, which looks much better. This is truly a camera phone, so you need to play around with settings to get the shot you want. At night, I'll start off by putting Xiaomi slightly ahead. The Galaxy's white balance is a bit warm, while the iPhone's photo is quite noisy and sharp. In the second photo, there is a green hue on the photo on the left. The Galaxy has slightly more pronounced shadows, which is to the detriment of the photo, but the iPhone doesn't look great either, as it's too sharp and looks artificial at night once again compared to the other two. The last photo is where you're able to see the big differences between the three much clearer. Xiaomi's flagship is doing well for itself, as my face and clothes are soft, but at the same time detailed. The iPhone is unable to replicate this, as their sensor is not able to absorb nearly as much light, which prompts the software to play around with the photo even more. The Galaxy has also done a nice job, but the 13 Ultra is just a king at night with regard to color and controlling the lights in the background. Overall, well done to Samsung for properly updating their phone after its release, as we're seeing some definite improvements in some areas. The first video is going to give us some important information. If we were to pay attention close to the beginning, we can both see the points that I want to talk about. While I've been a fan of iPhone videos for many years, I've realized that the reason was not because it was perfect, but because other phones could not even get close. Xiaomi has definitely stepped up to the plate with good detail in the footage and has managed to preserve a balance between dark and bright. Shooting an ultra-wide video outdoors is pretty standard and equal between the phones. Usually, like I said, Chinese companies couldn't keep up with Samsung and Apple in this area, but Xiaomi has made some much needed improvements to their camera setup overall. Indoors, I particularly like the video of the S23 Ultra, though I must say that they don't consistently get the best result when there is too much light. That's not to say that the others are not the same level though, as all three phones are showing a good performance, leaving me with not much to complain about. In ultra-wide though, you can see the iPhone software shining. Even though all of them have pretty good video quality here as well, the iPhone has adequately brightened up the surroundings, which makes it easier to spot and follow the subject as he moves around. This will give them the 3 points here, as the other two are able to get 2 each. At night, it's definitely going to be a showdown between the Xiaomi 13 Ultra and the iPhone 14 Pro. Both of them are quite sharp with good detail, as the S23 Ultra's footage is blurrier and less detailed compared to the other two. Ultrawide is pretty similar, as none of them look great, but the iPhone is slightly more consistent in showing details in the shadows overall. This is pretty hard, as the sensors for ultrawide cameras aren't usually amazing, so the iPhone makes do with better software in this regard. 8K though is an interesting story. As you probably already know, the iPhone 14 Pro doesn't have an 8K mode, but will most likely see one in the iPhone 15 Pro. I really like what the Xiaomi did with the 13 Pro and Ultra, as their 8K is miles ahead of what it used to be in the past. The S23 Ultra's 8K though is still the best, as the stabilization is more on point than the other phones in the market. How about zoom? The Xiaomi 13 Ultra can zoom at the same levels as the Galaxy S23 Ultra, but the one big difference between them is a 10 times optical zoom that Galaxy flagships always have in their pockets. This makes them unbeatable against the vast majority of phones, but I have to say I am still impressed by how Xiaomi is hanging in there. In the end though, the S23 Ultra just has the upper hand as the zoom category goes in its pockets. Stabilization though is a big surprise. Xiaomi has improved their software and fixed their bugs to such a degree that I have nothing but praise. While running, usually their stabilization was terrible. Now though, our opinion is that it's better than Apple at the beginning, but is slightly worse towards the end, leading in a tie, which was impossible in the past. While it has worse stabilization, you just can't beat what the S23 Ultra puts out from its front camera though. This phone takes amazing selfies as Galaxy flagships even at autofocus before all of the others. It's going to be the same for the next photo, especially focusing on skin texture, and this is a problem I mentioned in the intro. The Xiaomi 13 Ultra's front camera is mediocre, maybe even worse. Being one of the best camera phones on the market, I have no idea why they would not put in a great selfie cam to complete this top tier device. I mean, the third photo says everything. It looks like there's haze all over the photo on the left, which is just very disappointing. The outdoor portrait is no different as the Galaxy is pushing full speed ahead with great texture on the skin. At night, not a big fan of taking selfies, and you shouldn't be either. Still, you'll continue to get the best textures on the Galaxy while the other two are decent. If you were to take a portrait selfie, then Xiaomi and Samsung look to be okay, while the iPhone is just not the best phone to take photos with at night. But that is not all. Regardless of Samsung flagships taking much better photos with the front cameras, the iPhone is usually just more consistent with videos. Even then, I just can't keep my eyes off the video on the left. Really disappointing stuff by Xiaomi here, as it would have barely cost them anything to put a better front camera on their newest gem. Hey guys, we're going to be doing a quick audio test. This is a 3-phone comparison between 3 of some of my favorite phones actually, and the first phone that I'm looking at is the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. You guys wanted it and we finally have it. I think this is a magnificent camera phone, but it does have some flaws. And in the middle, you know that word that I always love to use when I talk about this phone, and that word is called consistency. You're looking at the iPhone 14 Pro, definitely an amazing phone, and I'm very curious to see how it will hold up against the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. And over here, well, I guess we can say the same for consistency, but in terms of Android, it's the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. This year they made a very good choice by using the Snapdragon chip instead of Exynos, and now we're going to see how that measures up. The mic of the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is okay, but the iPhone 14 Pro's audio just sounds crisp and cleaner when I talk. Only issue is, it has the least noise cancelling. The S23 Ultra has a lot of noise cancelling, and even though my voice isn't as crisp, it still sounds the best without all the sounds in the background. On the other hand, slow motion is one of my favorite categories, and this is especially true when we have a Xiaomi flagship on our hands. They're able to shoot 480 FPS and 1080p, which is pretty impressive by itself, but that is not all. Pushing them to the limit, you can get 1920 frames still at 1080p. I really like the video quality and the endless possibilities that you have while shooting with this mode, so thumbs up to the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. Lastly, we have a couple of macro shots, and in this category, what comes to mind is often either the Galaxy or the iPhone. They are pretty good when it comes down to the details, as they're able to get quite close and personal. The Xiaomi 13 Pro had a super cool macro mode which utilized the telephoto camera, but for some reason the Ultra doesn't have this, so they aren't performing as they should here. In the end, I have to say that I am very impressed, but at the same time, kind of disappointed with the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. It could have been the best camera phone of the year, but they just fell short and they have no one to blame but themselves. The photo category was won by the Xiaomi 13 Ultra with an amazing performance fueled by superior hardware. Ultrawide and portrait was won by Samsung this time around, and a bad performance at night is the main reason the iPhone is losing out in both categories. As I mentioned in our previous best video phone comparison, the iPhone is not the best video phone anymore, at least until the 15 Pro comes out. Until then, Xiaomi has become a very strong contender here. Zoom goes to the Galaxy while the iPhone still has the best stabilization software, but is now tied with the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. Samsung also takes front camera and audio, as Xiaomi is a winner of slow motion, and Apple is tied with Samsung for macro to round out the results. No surprises here, as the iPhone is the oldest of the bunch, with the newest Chinese phones being released very recently. If you would like us to read and reply to your comments about this comparison, don't forget to write some. You can also like and subscribe to support our efforts. See you around.